In a world untouched by human hands, nature held both wonder and terror. One moment, a quiet forest hummed with life. The next, lightning or the tremor of the earth unleashed a wildfire, consuming everything in its path. Flames roared and crackled, sending columns of smoke skyward, painting the sky in ominous shades of orange and gray. Early humans, small and fragile against such fury, scattered in panic, hearts pounding, lungs filled with choking smoke. The destruction was absolute. Trees collapsed, prey fled, and the scent of charred animals filled the air. Yet, as the fire's rage faded into glowing embers, a new sensation stirred. Curiosity crept in alongside fear, drawing cautious hands closer to the warmth. The flickering light revealed textures, scents, and possibilities never before imagined. That delicate tension between terror and fascination would mark the first fragile steps toward mastery of the most powerful force humans would ever command. Fire. As the first flames dwindled into glowing embers, a cautious bravery began to emerge among small groups of early humans. The heat, once a source of terror, now brushed gently against chilled skin, offering a strange comfort in the darkness. Eyes widened as they observed the transformation of what had been raw, and rigid roots blackened by fire now released a surprising sweetness. And strips of meat, once tough and difficult to chew, had softened into something almost tender. Fear gave way to fascination. Hands reached slowly toward the warmth, testing, touching, and tasting. Each cautious experiment sowed the first seeds of understanding as curiosity began to guide survival, and fire shifted from a destructive force to a source of possibility and wonder. The turning point came quietly, almost by accident. Among the charred remains of a wildfire, an animal carcass lay scorched, but intact. Hungry hunters, driven by desperation, dared to taste the blackened meat. What they discovered was astonishing. The flesh, once tough and sinewy, now yielded easily to their teeth, releasing a richness of flavor they had never known. Stomachs, once strained and aching from raw food, welcomed the softened sustenance. This accidental feast revealed a profound truth. Fire was more than warmth or protection. It was a tool that could transform survival itself. Excitement rippled through the clan, and soon the curious placed scraps closer to the dying flames, testing, observing, and learning. In that moment, the first deliberate experiments with cooking began, forever altering the relationship between humans and their food. What had once been a destructive force now took on a new meaning. Hunters and gatherers, once scattered by fear, began to gather intentionally round the fire, placing roots, nuts, and strips of meat over the glowing embers. The flames, once a symbol of danger, became the heart of the camper, place of warmth, sustenance, and connection. Stories were shared, laughter echoed through the night, and bonds between clan members deepened. The fire was no longer just a tool. It became a symbol of safety, of community, and of the shared discoveries that would shape the very essence of human culture. Cooking had arrived. Fire was no longer merely a tool for survival. It had become a cornerstone of culture. Around its warmth, clans gathered not just to feed their bodies, but to share stories, traditions, and discoveries. Taste, ritual, and togetherness intertwined. And in that glow, the first spark of human civilization began to shine. After a successful hunt, a stark reality awaited every clan. Meat spoiled quickly, and with it, the hard-earned reward of days of tracking and tracking prey. The stench of decay was constant, a reminder that life hung by a fragile thread. During harsh winters or dry seasons, a single miscalculation could spell hunger or worse. Survival demanded immediate consumption, yet nature offered no patience. This relentless pressure forced early humans to experiment, to stretch their food beyond a single meal, to test ideas born of necessity. In these desperate, tense moments, creativity became survival, setting the stage for one of humanity's first culinary revolutions. Sometimes, survival teaches in unexpected ways. Hunters noticed that strips of meat, left hanging above smoky fires, stayed edible far longer than meat left on the ground. The air carried charred scents, and the smoke lent a flavor both strange and enticing. At first, it was likely an accident, a fortunate side effect of cooking for warmth. But over time, careful observation revealed a pattern. Smoke slowed decay and preserved food. What began as a practical necessity gradually became an experiment, as curiosity sparked the first deliberate attempts to control fire and smoke, laying the foundation for one of humanity's earliest culinary innovations. Chance gave way to control. Early humans began to hang meat deliberately above fires, adjusting height and proximity to maximize preservation. They discovered that adding damp wood, leaves, or aromatic herbs changed the flavor. While different types of wood influenced how long the meat stayed edible, camps transformed into living laboratories of experimentation, where hunters and elders observed results, adjusted techniques, and shared discoveries. Smoking was no longer an accidental byproduct of fire, it became intentional, a marriage of survival and sensory exploration. In these moments, necessity evolved into skill, and human ingenuity turned the simple act of preserving food into a craft that would echo across generations. Smoke became more than a tool for preservation, it became a source of flavor. Fish, game, and even tubers absorbed the aromatic tendrils, turning simple survival into a sensory experience. What was once purely functional evolved into a creative outlet as clans experimented with different woods, herbs, and placement techniques. This was a turning point. Nourishment and pleasure converged, and food began to satisfy both body and senses. Camps filled not only with warmth and security, but with the enticing sense of flavor, signaling the earliest stirrings of culinary culture and the human desire to transform survival into art. Smoking changed the very rhythm of human life. Preserved meat allowed clans to store food, travel greater distances, and endure harsh seasons with a measure of security previously unimaginable. With hunger less immediate, time opened for exploration, tool-making, and the strengthening of community bonds. Smoke evolved beyond a cooking method, it became a tool of strategy and foresight, a quiet force that shaped survival, planning, and the trajectory of human civilization long beyond the reach of any single hunt. Even as fire transformed raw meat into tender sustenance, early humans quickly discovered its limits. Roots remained fibrous and stubborn, grains resisted digestion, and bones held precious marrow that fire alone could not release. Entire communities wrestled with the challenge of feeding the young, the elderly, and the sick, whose survival depended on softer, more nourishing food. Roasting and smoking were no longer enough. The pressure of survival demanded innovation, a method that could soften tough foods, unlock hidden calories, and stretch resources further. It was this urgent need that planted the first seeds of boiling, a technique that would forever expand the human diet. Necessity drove invention. Early humans discovered that animal skins, carefully treated, could hold water without bursting into flames, while woven baskets offered another vessel for experimentation. They began heating stones in the fire and dropping them into these containers, coaxing water to a simmer. The process demanded precision to hot, and the skins would rupture to cool, and the food remained raw. The entire community watched, tested, and refined each method, learning which stones held heat longest and which skins could endure the fire's intensity. Survival had sparked ingenuity. Boiling was no longer a chance occurrence. It was a deliberate, controlled technique, expanding the limits of what humans could cook and consume. The moment was nothing short of revolutionary. With the mastery of boiling, foods that had once been hard, bitter, or nearly inedible became tender and digestible. Roots softened, grains swelled with water, and the marrow within bones released into broths rich with energy and flavor. For the first time, multiple ingredients could be combined, creating primitive stews that nourished the body and strengthened the spirit. Food became more than sustenance, it became medicine, energy, and life itself. Communities felt a newfound abundance, able to extract every possible calorie from the land around them. This breakthrough reshaped survival, allowing tribes to grow stronger, healthier, and more resilient, redefining the very meaning of a meal. Boiling transformed more than food, it transformed community. Families gathered around steaming pots, sharing hearty stews that nourished not just the body, but the bonds that held the tribe together. Elders, children, and the weak could partake in meals once too tough to chew, and preparing food became a collaborative act. A space where knowledge and skills were passed across generations. These shared meals wove networks of trust, care, and cooperation, making survival a collective effort. Boiling was no longer merely a technique, it became the heart of daily life, shaping culture, social structure, and the very identity of early human communities. The invention of boiling reshaped the very landscape of human eating. With the ability to soften tough foods and combine ingredients, early humans could explore a wider range of diets and stretch precious resources further. From simple stones and animal skins, boiling turned survival into creativity, laying the groundwork for recipes, flavors, and culinary traditions. It nourished not just bodies, but communities, leaving a legacy that would ripple through generations, influencing the way humans experienced food and life itself for millennia to come. Early humans began to notice patterns in the foods around them. Some woods lent a sweet aroma to smoke. Certain roots softened more quickly when boiled, and herbs could transform plain, tough meat into something unexpectedly flavorful. What had once been chance observation slowly became deliberate experimentation. People mixed ingredients, adjusted cooking times, and watched carefully as flavors evolved. This moment marked the shift from mere survival to creativity, as curiosity and intelligence guided their hands. What had been simple sustenance began to take shape as early culinary exploration. The first spark of taste, technique, and intentional cooking. Food began to take on new meaning. Preparing a meal was no longer just a necessity, it became a craft, a skill to be mastered. Tribes shared techniques, passing knowledge from elders to children, and celebrated dishes that impressed the community. Cooking became a marker of identity and even social standing, as the ability to create flavorful meals reflected talent, care, and culture. With each successful dish, bonds within the group strengthened and curiosity flourished. Taste evolved from mere survival into a medium of expression, turning everyday meals into celebrations of human ingenuity and shared heritage. Cooking began to tell a story. Hunters brought fresh game, while gatherers offered roots, herbs, and aromatic spices. And together they combined these elements into dishes that reflected their clan's identity. Each meal became a narrative on the plate, carrying memory, knowledge, and tradition. Recipes were no longer just instructions, they were vessels of culture, handed down through generations. This turning point transformed food from mere fuel into a form of communication, a way to express who a people were, to preserve heritage, and to nourish not only the body but the soul of the community. A profound transformation was underway. Eating became more than a means to survive. It became ritual. Communal meals turned into moments of celebration, teaching, and connection, where preparation, sharing, and enjoyment carried deep meaning. Cooking evolved into an art, shaping social bonds and defining community identity. Every meal became an experience, a shared story that strengthened relationships and traditions. Food was no longer merely functional, it had become a vessel for culture, a daily practice that wove survival, skill, and meaning into the fabric of Stone Age life. The Stone Age kitchen planted the first seeds of gastronomy through careful experimentation with herbs, boiling, and smoking. Early humans discovered that food could be more than survival, it could carry flavor, creativity, and meaning. These nascent recipes transformed the natural world into nourishment and pleasure, embedding identity and pride into every meal. What began as a practical necessity became the foundation of culture, leaving a culinary legacy that would ripple across generations, shaping diets, traditions, and the very essence of human society. Fire reshaped humanity from the inside out. By softening foods and unlocking hidden nutrients, cooking reduced the need for massive jaws and crushing teeth, while fueling larger, more complex brains. With this newfound energy, humans could think faster, plan hunts, and solve problems that once seemed impossible. Communities thrived as adults had strength to provide and care for children, and knowledge spread more rapidly. Fire was no longer just warmth or protection, it became the unseen force sculpting bodies, sharpening minds, and laying the foundation for the civilizations that would follow as fire became a tool. Humans discovered that food was no longer limited by toughness or season. Roasting, boiling, and smoking transformed roots, grains, and resilient cuts of meat into nourishment, unlocking calories and nutrients previously out of reach. These breakthroughs turned scarcity into opportunity, allowing clans to endure harsher winters and unpredictable droughts. With survival more secure, early humans could explore new lands, refine tools, and cultivate skills beyond immediate needs. Innovations sprouted from necessity, and the ability to shape food became a gateway to growth, mobility, and the very expansion of human potential. With food made easier to chew and digest, early humans reclaimed precious hours once lost to constant eating. Energy once devoted to survival could now be invested in crafting tools, experimenting with new ideas, and strengthening social bonds. Around fire and shared meals, language, rituals, and teaching flourished. The act of cooking became a conduit for planning, learning, and collaboration. In this space between sustenance and innovation, humans discovered culture itself. Meals were no longer just nourishment, they were the engine driving art, knowledge, and the beginnings of organized society, shaping the trajectory of civilization. The act of preparing and sharing food became more than survival, it became the heartbeat of society. Around fire and steaming pots, early humans forged bonds, reinforced traditions, and discovered a collective identity. Meals grew into rituals, celebrations, and storytelling sessions. In mastering food, humans transformed daily struggle into cooperation, creativity, and culture, marking a turning point where survival evolved into civilization itself. Every meal we share today carries whispers of the Stone Age, the crackle of fire, the warmth of a pot over glowing embers, and the first boiled roots shaped not just diets, but culture, cooperation, and innovation. From survival to civilization, the mastery of food ignited human potential, a flame whose echoes continue to nourish and define us even now.